Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is a Harley Davidson Sportster S. It's sitting here at Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country, but this was essentially won in a contest, traded on a vehicle, and now it's available for you to buy at a great discount. But in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what this bike is, who it's for, what's impressive, and what's just a little different, because Harley does things different than anyone else. So let's get going with this review. So before we come in closer and take a look at all the specs and features of this and the different things that we can show you, let's talk about what the class that this belongs to. So first of all, this is a Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson doesn't necessarily do classes, they kind of create classes. So this is essentially the sport bike of Harley Davidson. So you still have that big V-twin engine, which we'll talk about in a second, but you also have something that is actually sport capable. As we start talking about the front suspension, it's an adjustable suspension. You have a lot of features there, exactly like a sport bike, but of course, it's still a cruiser of sorts. Where I would place this is more of a muscle bike. There's a lot of bikes that kind of in this sort of cruiser style vein that have a lot of power, but Harley of course does it their own way. So what I always do on this channel is we start by taking a look at the front wheel, where you can tell the manufacturer's intent, and we've got a lot of different things at the front wheel here, so let's get down there and start there. So taking a look at the front wheel here on this Sportster S, you do see some sport bike type things wrapped in a cruiser type style. So first of all, being a premium brand, normally I would point out sometimes the tire brand, a Dunlop GT 503, but it also says Harley Davidson right on there. These are custom made for this bike, and that again shows you a bit of a premium brand. Now over here you have upside down forks, not typical cruiser stuff, actually more typical sport bike stuff, and they're also fully adjustable. So you have that sport bike tunability here. What you do see here though is a completely different tire than you would see anywhere else. Behind me here in the shot are some Vulcan S's. The Vulcan S has a 160 width rear tire. This has a 160 width front tire, and this tire is actually larger. It's a 160 70R17 motorcycle tire. This is a very, very wide front tire. And again, it's not something like it's a rear tire. It's still designed to be a front tire. You have some other typical cruiser type stuff. So you got the alloy wheels here and a single disc brake. Now, single disc is not something you normally see on a bike, a sport bike with this kind of power, but they're Brembo brakes. It's going to give you enough power to brake. And again, the weight distribution of this is different than a sport bike, so your rear brake is going to do more than it would on a typical sport bike. So this isn't designed in a way that a sport bike's designed, but it definitely has that muscle bike power. So we're going to talk about that power right now. So taking a look at the heart of this bike, you have a new engine from Harley Davidson, a relatively new engine if you've been looking at older Harley Davidsons in the past. This is a 1250cc V-twin, so you still have that V-twin engine that's going to make a lot of torque, 93 foot-pounds of torque, but it also makes 121 horsepower. This thing is an absolute monster. Now, one of the differences between this and a typical sport bike is a typical sport bike, of course, is not a V-twin. Typical sport bike is all of the weight is angled forward and low. Now this is less forward and low. It's spread out like a cruiser, and that's why I say that rear brake is going to do more. Also a Brembo brake back here, but it's going to do more than on other bikes. Now you have a whole bunch of technology, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this video, that's going to help you both be sporty and safe, but you have a totally different design, sort of that flat track racing upper exhaust here. But this again is a big, powerful, brutish engine, but it's liquid cooled, it's a fully modern engine, and like I said, it makes fully modern power numbers, which is not something that some people expect from Harley Davidsons of the past. So before we dig into the technology on this bike, let's just show you what it looks like with me across it. So I'm an average 6-footer, about proportional leg body ratio. So you can see here, this thing, despite being big and relatively heavy, is very unintimidating to just sit across. You've got your legs bent here. It's not a full cruiser type style. You've got a comfortable forward lean. So your body from hip to handlebar is kind of like a sport bike, but not a super sport bike, right? It's more of a sort of everyday bike, something a lot like the sort of Z900 would be sitting behind me over there. But your feet are in a different position, a little more forward control in the foot position there. Now you can of course customize this up. It's a Harley Davidson. There's lots of ways you can customize that, but overall you have a very sporty type feel. Good firm clutch feel. It is a slipper and assist clutch with Harley's own branding on that. So if of course you're high rev and you drop that clutch, the clutch can slip to try to prevent the wheel from slipping, but you also have things like computer control technology, an IMU, which is an inertial management unit, which again has Harley's own branding, and that gives you a whole bunch of different things. It gives you things like the wheelie control. It gives gives you things like the cornering ABS as well as the regular ABS. So all of these things can sense the bike's lean angle, the bike's trying to lift, do different things, and it has electronics that can keep you in control in a whole bunch of different situations, from traction control to ABS. All of them are lean sensitive, and again, like that wheelie control, the different types of lift control, I believe they call it, all of which are going to keep you in contact with the ground if that's what you want to do. And on a bike like this, with this kind of geometry, I think that's what you would really want to do. But you will notice in this position that this is a very powerful bike, and the sport bike seating position is actually pretty comfortable for a bike of this kind of power class. Before we take a look at the dash and the controls, I do want to show you the rear tire here, because you have a sort of a shorty area here, no rear seat. You have your sort of bars attached here to have the legal brake light, and this is all wide open. This is only a 180 width tire, which again is still a very wide tire, but it looks so much wider in person simply because you're looking at it from the top. Now it is a 16-inch wheel, so it is a 180 70R 16 instead of a 17-inch wheel. So a little different sizing again than a typical sport bike, but again, made for this bike. Huge looking tire right behind there. Again, Harley Davidson's all about style. They do this really well, and in person, you definitely have the sense of a massive rear tire there. Take a look at the opposite side of the bike here. You can see just sort of the engine of course there, and you got this trellis type rear subframe or rear suspension swing arm there. Behind that is a belt drive, so it's a belt drive, of course, going to keep things clean. And then again, some of you guys are gonna like this, some of you guys are gonna not, but that is the standard lighting system that sort of mounts off there. That does give you a cool look from behind and meets, of course, the legal requirements. Now, the one thing I want to point out here, we mentioned the front suspension is adjustable. You also have a preload adjustment right here in the center of your screen, which I will try to zoom into if I can. There we go. Whoops. So there you go. You've got this here. It is a click style preload, so you have several clicks. You can set it to where you want, and also remember how many clicks you turned it if you want to sort of change it up a little bit for you. So again, you have that sport bike adaptability here in a totally different type feel and a muscle bike type bike. So taking a look at the dash here, we're going to turn it on. It's not a massive dash, but it is a very clear, easy to read dash. We're not going to do a full dash review here, but as we turn it on, you will see the dash come to life. Of course, it's got graphics here. This is, again, not something you may expect from a Harley Davidson. You've got this fully modern circular dash, and it really is a clear, well laid out dash. Of course, speed in the middle. You can change some of this stuff up. We're not, like I said, going to do a full dash review here. I will say that in person, it is much clearer than it shows on camera. That's pretty typical for a TFT display. A couple things I want to show you here though. Revs right up to 9,000 RPM. I don't think a lot of people expect that from a V-twin Harley, but this of course is that more modern engine. So you've got different modes here as well, always visible to you. So if I hit the mode button over here, it goes from sport to rain to the road mode or street. I can't remember what they call that exactly, but it sort of kind of cycles through and then it locks in as it changes the color there. You can sort of see that. So let me try to zoom in there a little bit more and just try to see if I can show you that a little bit clearer, because again, the screen is perfectly clear to me in person, but it's really not showing well here. Oh, there we go. If we can try to get it off to the side there, you can sort of see what it is. I'm going to try to focus in on there. So we're going to hit the mode button again. You can see the sport mode, and then it goes full red. You can see the rain mode, and then it goes blue. And then you can see the road or street mode, and that is the it goes kind of yellow. So you can see both based on the color and the icon what it is. And again, it's much, much clearer in person than it is in camera here. So a really nice full color display that gives you everything you could want in here. And that's something that I really appreciate. We do want to see here, yes, you see, this is what a lot of bikes do wrong with TFT displays. They don't put on the full signal. Again, these are green in person. They're not showing green, but you have a big bright at the top of the screen. Sometimes these dashes can be mounted low, and they mount the signals low as well. So some of the information you need is placed up high. Again, we could do a full dash review later, but let's just show you the controls. Before we go too far, you can see the full suspension adjustment here, exactly like a sport bike. But let's move over to left side and right side controls. So over here on the clutch side, you have a lot of things that are a little harder to see. First of all, there are adjustable levers on this. Both clutch lever and brake lever are fully adjustable, and you have some different style controls compared to the Japanese bikes that are in the showroom here, but of course headlights, they all kind of work the same way. You can lock it on to the high beam there, and you can tap on and flash to pass, which is super helpful as well. You do have cruise control on this bike. That's nice to have. Some of your menu type controls, you've got your grip heaters here, more menu type controls down here. So a lot of like easy to control stuff that are all largely spaced. So in addition to having the buttons around the edges, you can't press in on these seams here, so you won't accidentally hit 2 buttons at once. You'll know exactly what you're doing, even with gloves on. Home button there, multi-menus there. Down below there, there are your signals there. They are traditional signal switch, and of course they're self-canceling on a bike like this. You can cancel them in 2 or 3 ways, actually. They can self-cancel, but if I signaled that way, you could signal the opposite way to cancel them. You could also press it in to cancel. So anytime you touch that again, it's going to cancel for you, and of course your horn is down lower. But there's also a number of controls on the opposite side, so let's show you that as well. So over here on the throttle side, I'm going to show you a couple things. First of all, we mentioned that the adjustable levers, there's your brake lever adjustability. This is your mode button. That's going to change your ride modes. Very simple to reach from your throttle hand, which makes sense to me, easy to operate. This is what's going to turn the bike from off to on. This is a keyless entry bike, so as long as the key is in your pocket, you're good to go. But that's just off to on, and then of course the start button right there. We've got the hazard warning lights, which I like, and then of course all of your audio controls here. Now there's actually a couple controls underneath here as well. We're going to reposition the camera. I'm going to try to show you them as well because that's interesting. So looking just below the controls that I just showed you for audio, I do want to show you this button in particular. This bike has, of course, connectivity to your cell phone, and your cell phone, of course, can understand multiple languages. It can understand plain language, so it uses your cell phone plain language or text abilities, or sorry, understanding the words, so that's voice recognition. It uses that to operate various pieces on this bike. So you have that ability here. It's hidden, so you don't need to use them. You can use other types of controls there, but you also have that ability to use your voice to control different things, which is pretty cool. So I do want to come back to the dash here just to show you a couple things that you've got built in here that are and are not built in. So as we cycle through the menus here, for instance, your maps, it is going to require your cell phone to have maps on here. So it's going to use some of your cell phone device, but then you can have that in the dash here. As we cycle through, you got your music, of course, that's going to require a cell phone. Then you got your bike. You can take a look at some of the diagnostics. For instance, the temperature is just around 22 degrees Celsius in here. This is Canada where we're filming, so that's why it's in Celsius. Kilopascals, which is a tire pressure measurement in metric. I prefer using pounds feet, but the point is you have your front and rear tire pressure listed there, so tire pressure monitors. There's a number of things you can have in here, and again, it tells you exactly what to do. You can hit the check button to get out of here, you can hit the back button out of here, so there's a lot of different things. You can hit back to the menu button, settings in here, there's a number of settings, ride customization, appearance, everything. So you can really change this up, phone notifications, software, you can update the software. But one thing I do like here is when we hit those menu buttons here, and let's just go over to where we were, the settings, for instance, you can see that your dash display shows you which controls you can use. So again, as we cycle across to here, you can see it's telling you you can choose the center or the down button, which is clearly lit up there. So again, very easy to control. It's one of the better complicated dashes that is actually easy to control. And like I said, not nearly as clear in filming as it is in person. So let's talk about who this bike is for. Well, first of all, it's for Harley Davidson people, but of course Harley's been trying to grow their brand outside the Harley Davidson people for a while, and I think this bike might just do that. It certainly has its competitors in the European bikes for sure, and I think you could kind of compare it to something like the Z900 RS behind me, but it is a very, very, very different bike. This is not a practical Harley with its single seat. This is about style, this is about fun. So you do have something that gives you sport bike power with way more torque than a typical sport bike. 121 horsepower, but about 93 foot-pounds of torque. You still have that V-twin torque, so it is something very unique. It's not something that you're gonna right away take your passengers on because you just can't the way it is, but it is something that has all of the technology of modern sport bikes as far as, you know, like I said, tire pressure monitoring, but really that cornering, ABS, different types of traction control that can sense lean angles, different types of wheelie control that can sense lift angles. You've also got that advanced sort of sport bike style clutch. You've got a number of things on this that give you all of that sport bike feel, like the adjustable suspension front and rear. All of those things give you everything you could want in a sport bike with the Harley Davidson torque, sport bike horsepower, and on something that is relatively compact. Although it's still a heavier bike just because it's got a lot of engine in here, it doesn't feel super heavy and it's relatively compact. So this is something that really is an alternative to a sport bike, as long as a sport bike for you isn't leaning down and dragging your pegs. You do have about a 35-degree lean angle both sides of this, so you can get over pretty well for a cruiser, but again, it's not a sport bike on the racetrack as far as cornering goes. But on regular roads, country roads, that kind of thing, this thing is going to be an absolute blast drive with a whole bunch of power, a whole bunch of technology, and something that is truly a Harley Davidson. If that's what you want, you can get all that. So of course, this one is sitting here at Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, right here in the showroom. It is Halloween. It is October 31st, 2025. These things aren't that expensive. A lot of people think Harley Davidsons are $40,000 or $50,000 Canadian. They are not. This one is not for sure. So this one is a very price competitive Harley Davidson. I think there's a lot of value here when you consider the technology. And of course, this one is the best value one in the country right now because it's basically brand new, but of course it is a used bike, so you have that benefit as well. So come check it out. Tell me if you like it for you, and if you want me to do more Harley Davidson reviews, let me know and I'll try to work that out for you as well. Thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you in the next one.